My parents refused to babysit my son while I was in the hospital, choosing to travel with my sister. 3 years later they came for help because she ran away and abandoned her kids. My answer made them burst into tears. 6 months ago, my life fell apart when I found out my husband Mark was cheating on me with some young girl from his office. I guess I should have seen it coming. The late nights at work, the mysterious text messages, the sudden interest in working weekends. But when you're busy raising a 6-year-old, you sometimes miss the obvious signs staring you right in the face. My name is Tessa, and at 30 I never thought I'd be starting over as a single mom. But here I am, living in a modest 2-bedroom apartment in Seattle, just 15 minutes away from my parents' house. Moving closer to them seemed like the logical choice at the time, even though our relationship has always been complicated. I managed to find a good job at a marketing firm pretty quickly. The pay is decent, and I actually enjoy the work. The only catch is that I have to take occasional business trips, nothing major, just a day or two here and there. That's when things get interesting with my parents. The first time I asked them to watch Tommy during a business trip, you'd think I'd ask them to donate a kidney. My dad actually rolled his eyes and muttered under his breath. "We're retired, Tessa," my mom said, arms crossed. "We didn't plan on being full-time babysitters at our age." "I know, and I'll pay you," I replied, feeling my cheeks burn with embarrassment. "Whatever professional nannies charge, plus extra." It was like flipping a switch. Suddenly, they were willing to consider it, though they made sure to remind me what a huge imposition it was. The kicker? My older sister Sarah can drop off her kids anytime she wants, and my parents practically throw a party. Just last week, Sarah showed up unannounced with her 2 kids, one from each of her ex-boyfriends, and my mom couldn't have been happier. "Oh, my precious angels," she cooed, while my dad rushed to get the cookie jar. Meanwhile, when I bring Tommy over, they act like I'm dropping off a bag of dirty laundry. "Tommy, honey, go play in the guest room," my mom said during our last visit, then turned to me with that look I've grown to hate. "Now Tessa, Mrs. Henderson's son just got divorced. He's a dentist, you know, very successful." "Mom, I'm not interested in being set up right now," I said for what felt like the 100th time. "I need time to focus on Tommy and my career." "That's your problem, Tessa," my dad chimed in from his recliner. "You're too picky." No wonder Mark left. The irony isn't lost on me. Sarah's had 2 kids out of wedlock, has never held a steady job, and is currently living off her new boyfriend's money. But somehow, I'm the family disappointment because my husband cheated on me. "Have you thought about what I said about Dr. Roberts' son?" my mom asked yesterday while handing Tommy back to me after a short business trip. "He's only been divorced twice, and the second one wasn't even his fault. I've learned to let their comments roll off my back, mostly. What choice do I have? They're Tommy's grandparents, and despite their clear favoritism towards Sarah and her kids, I need their help. But sometimes, late at night when Tommy's asleep, I wonder how my own parents can treat me like this. How they can criticize every move I make, while turning a blind eye to Sarah's chaos. I woke up one Tuesday morning feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. My throat was raw, my head was pounding, and I could barely drag myself out of bed. Tommy was already up, watching cartoons in the living room. "Mommy, are you okay?" he asked, his big brown eyes full of concern. "You sound funny." I tried to smile, but even that hurt. "Just a little cold, buddy. Nothing to worry about." After calling in sick to work, I knew I had to figure out what to do with Tommy. I couldn't risk him catching whatever I had, so I grabbed a medical mask from the bathroom cabinet and called my parents. "I'm not feeling well," I croaked into the phone. "Could you watch Tommy for a couple of days until I'm better?" There was a long pause before my mother responded. "Well, you know our rates, Tessa, and we'll need the money up front this time." I wanted to scream. Who asks their sick daughter for payment in advance to watch their own grandson? But I bit my tongue and made the transfer right away. What choice did I have? After dropping Tommy off, I crawled back into bed, hoping some rest would kick whatever this was. But as the hours ticked by, I only got worse. By evening it felt like an elephant was sitting on my chest. Each breath was a struggle, and the room started spinning every time I tried to stand up. When I started seeing black spots in my vision, I knew this wasn't just a cold. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely dial 911. The next few hours were a blur of sirens, white corridors, and medical terms being thrown around. Finally, a doctor in blue scrubs stood at my bedside with a grim expression. "Severe pneumonia," he said, showing me my chest x-ray. "You'll need to stay in the hospital for at least 2 weeks." 2 weeks? My heart started racing. What about Tommy? What about work? I managed to call my boss first, who was surprisingly understanding about the situation. But when I called my parents, that's when everything really fell apart. "Mom, I'm in the hospital." I wheezed into my phone. "The doctors say I need to stay for at least 2 weeks. Could you please?" "Absolutely not." My mother's shrill voice cut through my explanation like a knife. "We're going on a trip in 3 days, your father, me, Sarah, and the kids. It's all arranged. We're not canceling our plans just because you can't handle your responsibilities as a mother. The hospital room seemed to close in around me as I processed my mother's words. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My own mother was choosing a vacation over her sick daughter and grandson. "Mom, please," I begged, my voice cracking from both emotion and illness. "I'll pay you double what you usually charge for watching Tommy. I know it's an inconvenience, but I'm really sick." The silence on the other end of the line stretched out for what felt like an eternity. I could picture my mother sitting in her favorite armchair, probably twirling that strand of gray hair she always plays with when she's calculating something. Finally she spoke. "Well, your father and I paid $5,000 for this trip," she said, her voice taking on that familiar business-like tone she uses when she thinks she has the upper hand. "If you can pay us $10,000 to cover our expenses and the inconvenience, we'll consider canceling." The oxygen monitor beside my bed started beeping faster as my heart rates bite. $10,000? I felt like I was in some bizarre nightmare where my mother had turned into a hostage negotiator and my son was the hostage. "Mom, that's crazy," I wheezed, trying to catch my breath. "You know I don't have that kind of money right now. I'm a single mother with a mortgage to pay." "Then I suggest you figure something out," she snapped. "Because if you don't pick up Tommy in 3 days, I'm putting him outside." "I'm not missing this trip, Tessa. You always do this, create drama, and expect everyone to drop everything for you." The line went dead. I stared at my phone in disbelief, then immediately tried calling back. No answer. I tried again, straight to voicemail, again, nothing. My own mother had blocked my number while I lay in a hospital bed, struggling to breathe. The reality of my situation hit me like a tidal wave. I was alone in this city, really, truly alone. All our relatives lived in other states, Aunt Martha in Florida, Uncle Jim in Texas, Cousin Rachel in Michigan. And having only moved back 6 months ago, I hadn't had time to build any close friendships yet. Sure, I had work colleagues, but who asks a work acquaintance to take their child for 2 weeks? In desperation, I did something I'd been trying to avoid. I called Mark. My hands were shaking as I dialed his number, and not just from the fever. "Tessa," he sounded surprised to hear from me. "What's wrong?" I swallowed my pride and explained the situation, trying to keep my voice steady. "I know it's a lot to ask, but could you possibly take Tommy for a couple of weeks? I'm in the hospital with pneumonia, and my parents I can't." He cut me off. "Rachel's due to give birth any day now. We're actually heading to the hospital tomorrow for the scheduled C-section." Rachel, his new wife, the 25-year-old who'd been his secretary, the one he'd left us for. And now she was giving birth to their new baby, while I lay here alone in a hospital bed, with nowhere to send our son. I stared at my phone's contact list. There was one name I'd been avoiding, one last possible lifeline, but just seeing it made my stomach churn. Patricia, my former mother-in-law. We hadn't spoken since the divorce 6 months ago, and even before that, our relationship had been rocky at best. Patricia had never thought I was good enough for her precious Mark. She'd made that clear from day one, with her backhanded compliments and not-so-subtle criticisms. "Oh, you're working in marketing? How interesting. I always thought Mark would end up with someone in a more substantial profession." That kind of thing. After the divorce, she'd cut all contact with me. No surprise there. She'd probably been thrilled when Mark traded me in for a younger model. But right now, she was my only hope. My finger hovered over her name for what felt like hours. The oxygen mask fogged up with each shaky breath I took. Finally, I pressed call before I could talk myself out of it. 1 ring, 2 rings, 3. "Tessa?" Patricia's voice was filled with surprise, and something else I couldn't quite identify. "Is everything all right?" Just hearing her voice, that familiar, properly modulated tone that had so often delivered subtle jabs at my parenting, my career, my everything, made my eyes well up with tears. "Patricia," I started, my voice breaking. The whole story came tumbling out between suppressed sobs and wheezing breaths. The pneumonia, the hospital, my parents' ultimatum, Mark's refusal to help. By the end I was practically hyperventilating, and a nurse had to come adjust my oxygen flow. The silence that followed felt endless. I braced myself for rejection, for some cutting remark about how this proved I couldn't handle things on my own. "I'll be there tomorrow," Patricia said firmly. "Text me your apartment address and your parents' address. I'll pick up Tommy and stay at your place with him until you're better." With trembling fingers, I sent her the information. For the first time since being admitted to the hospital, I felt like I could breathe a little easier, and it wasn't because of the oxygen mask. The next morning, my phone rang again. This time it was my mother, her voice dripping with irritation. "When are you coming to get your son?" she demanded. "He's being impossible, and we have packing to do." I took a deep breath, summoning what little strength I had. "My former mother-in-law is coming to pick him up today." The snort my mother let out was so loud it crackled through the phone speaker. "Your ex-mother-in-law? Really, Tessa? You couldn't find anyone better than that woman?" Before I could respond, she'd hung up. I lay back against my pillows, wondering how my cold, critical former mother-in-law had just proved to be more of a mother than my own. The first photo arrived just hours after Patricia picked up Tommy. My little boy was grinning at the camera, ice cream smeared across his face, looking happier than he had in weeks. "Someone wanted a Sunday after lunch," the caption read. I found myself smiling despite the pain in my chest. Throughout the day, more photos kept coming. Tommy doing his homework at the kitchen table, Tommy helping to make dinner, Tommy showing off a pillow fort he'd built in the living room. Each snapshot was like a tiny piece of home reaching through the sterile hospital walls. "Look what Grandma Patricia got me." Tommy's excited voice came through in a video message that evening. He was proudly displaying a new dinosaur puzzle. The camera panned to show Patricia sitting cross-legged on my living room floor, puzzle pieces scattered around her. The days passed more easily knowing Tommy was in good hands. I focused on my recovery, doing breathing exercises, and following every instruction from my doctors. Finally, after a week of treatment, they cleared me for visitors. The sound of running feet echoed down the hospital corridor before Tommy burst into my room, his face lit up with joy. "Mommy." He threw himself carefully onto my bed, mindful of the 4 lines just as Patricia must have warned him to be. "We brought you some real food," Patricia said, holding up a thermal bag. "Hospital food isn't fit for recovery." She unpacked containers of homemade soup, fresh bread, and what looked like my favorite lemon squares, though I'd only mentioned liking them once, years ago at a family gathering. As Tommy chatted excitedly about his week, I watched Patricia. She was different somehow, softer around the edges, the perpetual criticism absent from her expression. She asked about my treatment, actually listened to my answers, and seemed genuinely concerned about my well-being. Their visits became a daily bright spot. Patricia would bring something new each time: books, magazines, more home-cooked food. She'd tell me funny stories about Tommy's adventures at home while he played with the toys she'd brought him. During one visit, while Tommy was absorbed in his new coloring book, Patricia grew quiet. She seemed to be wrestling with something. "I owe you an apology, Tessa," she finally said, her voice low. "The way I treated you all those years. I was wrong." I nearly dropped the soup spoon I was holding. In all the years I'd known her, I'd never heard Patricia admit to being wrong about anything. "I've seen who my son really married now," she continued, a shadow crossing her face. "That woman, all she cares about is spending Mark's money, 3 different designer handbags in 1 week. And the way she talks to him." She shook her head. "You were good for him, Tessa. You loved him for who he was, not what he could buy you." I was too blind to see it then. As I watched her help Tommy with his coloring, I realized that sometimes family isn't about blood or marriage certificates. Sometimes it's about who shows up when you need them most, who puts their own life on hold to take care of your child, who brings you soup and apologizes when they've been wrong. While I was still in the hospital, my phone buzzed with a social media notification. My sister had tagged our parents in some photos from their beach resort. There they were, all smiles and sunburns, cocktails in hand, the kids building sandcastles. The caption read, "The main thing is the family." I actually laughed out loud when I saw it, startling the nurse who was checking my for. The irony was almost too perfect. "The main thing is the family," posted by the same people who had demanded $10,000 to look after their sick daughter's child, the same people who had threatened to put their own grandson out on the street. When I was finally discharged, Patricia and Tommy were waiting at my apartment. They'd cleaned the whole place, stocked the fridge, and even put up a welcome home, mommy banner that Tommy had made himself. I hugged Patricia tight, trying to convey everything I couldn't put into words. "Thank you," I managed to say, "for everything." "That's what family is for," she replied simply, and I felt the weight of those words, how different they sounded coming from her compared to my own parents' empty version. Getting back to normal life took time. I found a wonderful babysitter named Maria who Tommy absolutely adored. When I had to travel for work, I didn't even consider calling my parents anymore. Why subject Tommy to people who saw him as a burden when Maria treated him like her own? My parents tried calling a few times, but I let it go to voicemail. What was there to say? They'd shown me exactly where I stood in their hierarchy of importance, somewhere below a beach vacation and $10,000. Patricia and I talked regularly, at least once a week, sometimes more. She'd FaceTime with Tommy, send care packages, and always seemed genuinely interested in our lives. It was the kind of maternal relationship I'd always wished I had with my own mother. Then, 5 months after the hospital incident, Patricia called with an unexpected proposition. "My brother David is looking for someone with your exact qualifications for his company," she said, an excited note in her voice. "I mentioned you to him, and he looked up your work portfolio online. He's very impressed." I sat up straighter. "Oh? The salary is double what you're making now," she continued. "And before you ask about Tommy, I'd love to watch him while you're at work. I'm retired now, and this way he'd have his grandmother nearby." My mind was spinning with possibilities. Double my current salary. A fresh start in a new state. Tommy having a grandmother who actually wanted to spend time with him. 2 weeks later, Tommy and I were packed and ready to go. I didn't tell my parents or Sarah we were leaving. They'd figure it out eventually, but by then we'd be long gone, starting our new life with the family that had chosen us. 2 years can change everything. Tommy was thriving in his new school, making friends and bringing home excellent grades. I had worked my way up to senior marketing director at David's company, and my salary had grown even more. Patricia had become a true grandmother to Tommy, showing up at his soccer games, helping with school projects, and spoiling him with love rather than just material things. We were finally house hunting, looking for a place to call our own. Just that morning I'd been reviewing mortgage options, calculating down payments, and dreaming about having a backyard where Tommy could play. Then my phone rang. An unfamiliar number with a familiar area code. "Hello?" I answered cautiously. "Tessa? It's Mom." I almost dropped my coffee mug. 2 years of silence, and now this? My mother's voice sounded different, strained, desperate even. "What do you want?" I tried to keep my voice neutral, but 2 years' worth of hurt made it hard. "We need your help," she said, without even asking how I was. Classic mom. "It's about Sarah." Of course, it was about Sarah. It was always about Sarah. "What about her?" "She's gone." My mother's voice cracked. "She ran off with some man she met online, just packed a bag and left. She didn't even say goodbye to the kids, just left a note saying she needed to find herself and drove off with him." I sat down heavily in my office chair. "She abandoned her children?" "They've been with us for 3 weeks now," Mom continued. "Your father and I, we're not as young as we used to be. And children are so expensive these days. The food, the clothes, the school supplies." I could see where this was going. "What exactly do you want from me, Mom?" "Well," she said, her voice taking on that familiar manipulative tone I remembered so well. "You are their aunt. We thought you could send us some money every month to help with their expenses. It's the least you could do for family." I couldn't help it, I laughed. A real, genuine laugh that bubbled up from somewhere deep inside me. "The least I could do for family?" I repeated, still chuckling. "Like when you demanded $10,000 to watch your own grandson while I was hospitalized? Like when you threatened to put a 6-year-old child out on the street? That kind of family obligation? That was different," my mother spluttered. "We had plans." "No, Mom, you had a choice. You chose a beach vacation over your sick daughter and grandson. You chose Sarah's drama over my stability every single time. And now you're calling me, after 2 years of silence, asking for money? We're talking about innocent children here, Tessa." "Yes, we are. Just like we were talking about an innocent child 2 years ago, my son, your grandson, when you abandoned him. I'm sorry Sarah left her kids. I truly am. But you raised her to be who she is, and now you get to deal with the consequences. Well, if you won't help willingly," my mother's voice turned sharp, "we'll just bring the kids to your apartment and leave them there. Then you'll have no choice but to take responsibility." I couldn't help but smile at her empty threat. "Go ahead, Mom, but good luck finding me. I moved to another state 2 years ago." "You what?" she sputtered. "Where are you?" "That's not your concern," I replied calmly. "You know what they say about karma, Mom? It always comes back around. You and Dad raised Sarah to believe she could do whatever she wanted without consequences. You enabled her behavior for years while criticizing every move I made. Now you're reaping what you've sown." "Please, Tessa." Her voice cracked, finally dropping the threatening tone. "We're your parents. We need your help." Funny. I was your daughter when I needed your help, and that didn't seem to matter much. "Goodbye, Mom. Don't call again." I hung up and immediately blocked their number, feeling lighter than I had in years. Later that evening, as I watched Tommy and Patricia working on a science project at the kitchen table, I knew I'd made the right decision. Months passed. Life went on. Through the family grapevine, mostly my Aunt Martha, who loved sharing gossip during our monthly calls, I heard all about my parents' struggles. They'd hired an expensive babysitter because they couldn't handle the kids on their own. They were burning through their retirement savings. And of course they were telling anyone who would listen about their ungrateful younger daughter who refused to help family in need. "But you know what's really rich?" Aunt Martha said during our last call. "They haven't said one bad word about Sarah. Can you believe it? She literally abandoned her children without warning, ran off with some man she met online, and they're still making excuses for her." I wasn't surprised. Some things never change. Last week, I closed on our new house, a beautiful 4-bedroom with a big backyard, just perfect for Tommy's upcoming 10th birthday party. Patricia had already claimed one of the spare bedrooms as her grandma room for when she visits, which is often. Tommy is flourishing in school, making honor roll and playing on the soccer team. I was recently promoted to Executive Director of Marketing, and David keeps hinting at a partnership track in my future. Our life is full, happy, and drama-free. Sometimes, when I'm sitting in our backyard, watching Tommy and Patricia tend to the small vegetable garden they started together, I think about how strange life can be. How the people you expect to stand by you can let you down so completely, while help can come from the most unexpected places. How losing what you thought was everything can lead you to something better. My parents' opinion of me doesn't matter anymore. Their words can't reach me here, in this life we've built for ourselves. A life full of love, respect, and real family. The kind that shows up when you need them, no price tag attached.